Welcome, everybody. I'm Mark Marquette here at the American Space Museum's golden anniversary of the dawn of the Space Shuttle era, our final session of a fabulous day where we've had over 150 people, mostly shuttle workers, sharing their stories, seeing each other for the first time in years, I'm sure, and hearing some awesome, awesome tales from what we call national treasures, our devoted American space worker. Today we have with us we want to thank the Hyatt Place, a wonderful hotel. First time we've done an event here, and we hope to do many more events. Wanted to thank Tom Sieck for being our official photographer, driving all the way down from Lancaster, Pennsylvania, much to his little brother Mark's chagrin. He's not in the trunk, is he? Okay. Well, there are regulars on there. Mike Ronaldo, thank for your excellent audio for today. Give Mike a little hand here, flawless. And I will recommend him to anybody to do your event, all right? And we've Ken Havicott, Sew Sister Space Creations, artist Tim Gagnon, photographer Carlton Bailey, Jim Tully with our Hall of Honor, photographer Ken Kramer, artist Ron Woods, J.L. Pickering, and John Bisney. Got their beautiful books, author Brian Tripp Banks, and Yaya Creations. Where's Tori at? She might be out there. Okay. We don't want to forget her. So we hope this is just the beginning of a Shuttlefest celebration around the April 12th date of STS-1 that we all enjoy. And so you can get a hold of us at the museum and let us know how some lessons learned that we can make this even a better event. So, well, we've had a great day, and every presenter has been introduced by an icon of NASA, Mr. Hugh Harris, who spent 50-some years in the information department of NASA, starting in Cleveland and then working here at Kennedy Space Center, promoted by Bob Crippen as the director, and still has his NASA badge and will be celebrating 60 years as a NASA badge person. Welcome, Master of Ceremonies, Mr. Hugh Harris.
Thank you, Mark. Let me put this down a little bit. These three men have probably launched 3/4 of all the humans who went to space, from the beginning of civilization to the end of the shuttle program. Even today, they've launched more than half of all the people who have gone to space. But no matter if their record is broken, they have helped accomplish major advances in knowledge and capabilities for us humans. But we didn't come to praise them, but to learn about their adventures as Space Shuttle launch directors from the very best sources possible themselves. And while they may not say, "aw shucks," I think they'll give credit to the huge teams that they led. But we know that they played a big part also. We probably should start with the first of them to hold the title of launch director, Bob Sieck.
Well, in the sum and substance of the launch director job, it was explained to me in no uncertain terms by one of my bosses one time. Said, you got this 5-page job description here that you can go through your performance appraisal every so many months or whatever. He said, but read my lips. Your job is to make sure that team out there doing the work has all the resources they need to be set up to be successful, and that we don't do anything dumb in the launch decision process. He said, that's it. You can put away all those pages of job description, performance appraisal stuff or whatever. That's the sum and substance of what you're responsible for. So yes, sir, salute, and I got it. As responsibilities go, it's really a great job. because you don't have to worry about the overhead of running a large organization. That's to the guys and gals that have the big office with the big desk and all the carpet or whatever, and they worry about budgets and contracts and personnel issues and whatever. The launch director is like the on-scene commander in a proverbial firefight or a campaign. It's better described, of getting this hardware that gets shipped to the Cape, in this case, from delivery with some assembly required always, to be tested and actually certified, ready to launch. That's your job. That's your full-time job. Whatever you need to set the team up to succeed, to be successful in that, it's your job as launch director to go get it. And management is here to support you doing that. And it's essentially an easy task. My training as launch director came from people who had the proverbial big shoes to fill. I think you got a picture in there somewhere, Hugh, of Rocco Petrone and Walt Caprian and maybe even George Page. Well, those are the guys that preceded me in that responsibility. And yeah, there's Rocco and Walt, and so those are the ones I followed. They trained me, and I trained my successors that are here with me, and that's the sum and substance of it. That's what we did. I think the biggest challenge, although I wasn't launch director for STS-1, was the coming out of Apollo, the learning how to deal with a very complex system compared to what we did in Apollo and before that. Most of us got our technical degrees from the 50s technology, where a chip was still something you carved off a block of wood. Transistors had just been invented, and now we're getting ready to process and launch this vehicle, particularly the orbiter, that's got thousands of parts that either latch or unlatch or open or close or turn off and on, and it's got these things called real computers in them, and you're going to have to learn how computers work. You're going to have to write software. You're going to have to test all that stuff and fly this spaceship. And although in the past you knew how to process brand new flight off the shelf, ready to fly hardware, well, now you're going to have to turn this around and you're going to reuse all these parts. So the rules are different. So you're going to have to learn how to do all that with this new system called the Space Shuttle. Fortunately, we had years to get ready for that. The approach and landing test program gave us an opportunity to at least test some of the aspects of the Space Shuttle orbiter out at Edwards Air Force Base. The time we got this first shuttle orbiter, Columbia, down here, because of the tile issues, we had years to debug our software and our procedures and all the equipment that we thought we had ready to go test this complex system, but in reality, we really didn't. And so I was asked one time, well, what should the legacy of Columbia be? I said, well, Columbia trained the launch team at the Kennedy Space Center. We learned from it. Yeah, we had our manuals and procedure books and whatever, the advertising brochure, so to speak, for this hardware, but Columbia really trained us to do what we were responsible for. So as the program progressed and we got smarter, then we found that we weren't as good as we thought we were, and set back because of Challenger. And I think that was, in terms of my career, the most challenging job, because now I had, as a journeyman lead engineer for the first shuttle launch, it was I had the guys, as you saw there, to get us ready for that. But the return to flight, bringing the team back together, was probably one of the biggest challenges of my career. And as time went on, like everyone else, I finally had to, I tried not to be one of Jay Honeycutt's high maintenance employees, but I really resisted that next step of going up to management. But he convinced me that if I didn't do it, the people in Washington were going to send somebody down here that didn't know that the pointy end of the rocket went up. And so it would be better if I took his previous job as opposed to continued with what I was enjoying doing. So I turned it
I'm going
over
to drive this a little bit here
Jim
with us here. We wanted Mr. Harrington to go first, and we'll get to him. But you're talking all about them pieces and parts, Bob. Why don't you tell us all how beans had something to do with this? And I got a picture of the beans up there, and your friend there. I know Mike can talk about that too.
Yeah, that's Norm Carlson, the test conductor, one of Jim Harrington's colleagues from the Apollo program and the Launch Vehicle Test Conductor Office. And he had a tradition of doing the beans for all of the test directors in the office, which was right above the firing room, the control room for the shuttle launches. So most of us knew there was something going on up there in the process of, regardless of the time of day of the launch.
You could smell them in the hallway.
Yeah. So
How'd that tradition develop as a good luck charm?
it's well, I'm really not sure. I can only describe it. It must have been an Oklahoma thing, because that was Norm and his wife Bobby were born and raised in Oklahoma. So it must have been a good luck type of thing for them. But in addition, they were really good. It was better than the simulated food you got from the cafeteria.
All right. And everyone was hungry. Well, we're going to reset this. We're going to go back to Mr. Harrington here, and he's going to share a couple highlights of his career. He was on Stay Curious last week, an excellent show where he talked about something that people, we talked about you being an old dog learning new tricks, because Sieck told me you were an old Cape Canaveral guy in there, and you were involved with one of the most top secret and amazing things that ever happened. Tell us about the score, Mr. Harrington.
When I was working for General Dynamics, working on the Atlas, started with them when I got out of school in '57. In 1958, towards the end of the year, there was a mission that came along for the Atlas to do, called Project Score. Now, at the time that we got the vehicle ready to launch, none of us at the pad knew anything about Project Score. So come launch day, one of my tracking packages on the Atlas, I come to find out by my boss, the test conductor, who stopped me from going in the blockhouse to get on station. He said, let me talk to you for a minute. He said, something I'm about to tell you can't tell anybody. He said, it's classified, and we have removed one of your tracking packages off the vehicle. So when it comes to time in the countdown to turn that on, he says, you got to fake it. I said, okay, saluted, went into the blockhouse, and sure enough, when it came time to in the count to turn that particular package on, I did. Now, unbeknownst to me, when I turned it on, it was actually powering up a replacement package on the Atlas. So we went through the count, and I might add that the range people called me up prior to liftoff on the radio and said, we can't find DOVAP. That was the name of the tracking instrument. And the only thing I could tell him, I said, well, you got to keep looking because it's out there somewhere. So in any event, the launch was successful, and that was the first time that we had ever put an entire vehicle into orbit. The Atlas went into orbit, and right around Christmas time, President Eisenhower had recorded a message prior to the launch. Excuse me, and that was Project SCORE. He wished everybody, of course, a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays and world peace and so forth. So that was Project SCORE.
Yeah, very interesting. We've got this plaque in our museum there. In fact, Murphy Wardman, who's 90 years old, and you know Murphy, lead electrical engineer. I said to Murphy one time, the whole rocket went up in orbit. He said, Mark, it was supposed to go 3,000 miles and hit Moscow. 150 miles is nothing, up there. So, well, now we'd like for you to segue into your relationship with George Page and the dirty job he gave you out there for STS-3.
Well, George Page, of course, was launch director for STS-1 through, I forgot how many went, do you know, Bob? Six. So in any event, on STS-1, I had been working as vehicle manager on the orbiter in the OPF. And when we got it out and made it to the external tank, my quote job ended at that point. And George Page told me, he said, I want you to go to Edwards for the landing. And I want you to go out there ahead of time to get everybody ready. So I did. I went out there, took the team out there, and we got everything ready to go. And we had, of course, a successful landing for STS-1. And let me just say one little thing. There was a press conference post-landing, and I got the dubious honor of having to go to that press conference and talk. Thank you. So in any event, one of the questions was from somebody from ABC, Jules Bergman, that was who it was. He asked me the question, he says, what would have happened if you had gone to landed at Kennedy? Of course, it was already pre-planned to land at Edwards. And I just told him quite honestly, I said, well, we'd be 3,000 miles closer to home. But in any event, part of the job that I had was for post-landing and getting the vehicle ready to come back. We had to prepare in the event a vehicle shuttle had to land overseas or someplace other than Edwards or at Kennedy. We had to prepare for how do you get the orbiter up off the ground and onto the 747 to bring it home. Hence the operation that we called for the stiff leg derrick and a mobile crane. And it was a team of us that went up to Huntsville and practiced this. Used the Enterprise as the quote dummy shuttle to practice putting this up and down on a 747. And when STS-3 came along, there we were with the rain at Edwards. We had to go to White Sands for the landing, and that was the picture you see out there now was us putting that vehicle up on a 747 out in the middle of the desert. And when I say in the middle of the desert, I mean it. There was nothing around except white sand. And a little added note about that white sand. The day that STS-3 was supposed to land, it was a clear day, but the wind had come up. And there's a phenomenon that happens out there when the wind gets up above 27 knots. The sand starts flying. And the day that we were to land, it was a total whiteout. I mean, literally, you could not see from me to the first row here of that far in front of you with all of that sand. So we sent the convoy out, or attempted to send them out to their landing position. They got lost 3 times trying to get out to the right spot. I kept telling the folks in Houston that, hey, you guys can't land today. We can't see. And I guess, not being in the aircraft, but the STA flying, practice landings for the shuttle must have been able to see the runway, because they kept saying, oh, it's fine, we can land. So finally, George Page, who, thank goodness, was out there with us, came to the rescue and talked to somebody at Houston, I assume flight director, and they waved off the flight to the next day. But just to show you how bad that sand was, when we got home, when we got through that day, when I got ready to go home in the car, there was 1.5 inches of white sand inside my car, and it was sealed up tight.
Yep. And Columbia still had some in her, I guess.
That's right. Columbia always had some in it.
Yeah. Jim, you wanted to talk a little bit about those, some of the Russian, your string of 3 years there launching all kinds of, there's mostly the Russian era there from 95 to 97. You want to comment about that a little bit for us, and then we'll get to Mike.
Well, when we, prior to the launches going to Mir, most of the launch windows were rather long and running, 2.5 hours, 2 hours. Some of them were a little short. If we had spacecraft to launch, they'd get down maybe 30 minutes, 45 minutes. But when it came to Mir, that's the first time we ever had what we call a short launch window. It was nominally a 10-minute window with an ideal, as JSC like to call it, an ideal pane within that window, which was the ideal launch time. So that prompted some changes to the launch count, and that's why we always had a hold at T-minus 9 minutes in case there was any problem, so we'd be ready for the 10-minute launch window. The only problem that I can remember on one of those Mir launches was we had a phenomenon a weather phenomenon. There was a clear day, wasn't any problem as far as launch window was concerned, but 3 of the field mills that we used to detect an indication of rocket triggered lightning, or capability to have it, 3 of those tripped between 39A and Complex 41 on the Cape. And the weather guy called up and said, I can't give you a go for launch. And I turned around and looked out the window behind me, and I said, you gotta be kidding. It was a clear day. There was nothing around, but these field mills, that was part of the criteria for a launch window readiness for weather. They were indicating, and there was nothing we could do about it, so we just had to sit there and wait for the window to go by and then try again another day, which we were fortunately able to do.
One thing we talked about was you had to acclimate yourself to Moscow time.
That's true, because the Mir, of course, was launched from Russia, so consequently that station had to be in radio contact with Russia. So consequently, the launch was changed to the high inclination orbit, and that's when the solid rocket boosters would drop off about 150 miles east of Jacksonville, and that's where we'd have to pick them up. So just because the vehicle would actually fly up the coastline, up around towards North Carolina, and then start heading east.
Well, Mr. Harrington and Mr. Leinbach were involved in both the shuttle tragedies in their own way, and I'd like Mr. Harrington to end his little segment here with probably a story you've never heard of before.
That was, he's referring to the Challenger accident. I was a flow director on the Challenger at that time, and consequently, center director had a plane load. We went out to Houston for the memorial service. And on the way back to Kennedy, he and George English asked me to come up there and chat with them, and their idea was to have a KSC memorial service for the crew. And they, excuse me, wanted me to be part of it. And my part was to, at the end of the service, was to go up to the stage, pick up the wreath, go get in the astronaut van, ride out to the runway, get in a NASA helicopter, and fly out over the ocean, and on a predetermined time by countdown, throw the wreath out of the helicopter. So this all transpired, and I did it. Got out there, and the pilot in the helicopter, he banked the helicopter up like this, so when I threw it out, it went up, and then the reef sailed down into the ocean. And what nobody saw at the time, including me, was that as soon as it hit the ocean, a whole bunch of dolphins came up and circled around the reef.
I believe there's a video of that on there, but great, wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Harrington, and so glad that you could participate. We'll go to Mike here. Mike Leinbach launched the last 11 years of the shuttle program. He's been a great supporter of our museum and many things, and we talked about the family of the shuttle workers, Mike, and I'll cue up a couple pictures here. Take it away.
Well, thanks, Mark. First of all, I got to thank Bob and Jim. Bob talked about training under different launch directors. I trained under both these gentlemen. Whatever success I had, I owe a lot to you two, so thank you very much. Second of all, it's not lost on me that I'm the final speaker before happy hour. And so for a couple of the people in the audience who remain nameless, I'll try to be short. Bob. Okay. The family aspect, I'll get to the family aspect, but if I could, can I change a little bit?
Oh, whatever you want to talk about, sir. Yeah, absolutely. You guys interact and so forth like that.
What I thought I'd do is answer the question that the three of us probably get more than any other. What is it like to be the launch director on Launch Day? So I'll do a little bit on that. I want to talk about some celebrations and maybe some traditions, but the launch director job, it was created back in the very earliest days of America's manned spaceflight programs, and it's the position of authority and responsibility to give the final go for launch. Yes, we did that. But it was a job intentionally created without a lot to do on launch day in the control room. We got to sit back and watch the greatest team in the world run through the test to allow the shuttle to launch, and so we weighed in on major issues, but we had a whole team of people, test directors, test conductors, and all the system engineers to verify all 22,000 of the parameters that had to be correct to launch the shuttle. 22,000. They did that. We watched them do that, and it was glorious to see them go through their checks and commit the vehicle to launch. Some of you did that for a living. I recognize several of you in the audience. The launch director job, we just got to sit back and watch the team perform. And if it came down to it, do the one thing that we were all trained to do is keep that damn thing on the ground. The job of the launch director was to not launch the shuttle. As Sieck and Harrington taught me,
Say no.
say no. You'd much rather scrub and be wrong than launch and be wrong. And so our job was to keep that thing on the ground until all the parameters were correct, and you get that gut feeling inside that, yeah, we've done as best as we possibly can today to make it as safe as possible for the astronauts. That's the sum total of the launch director job is to stand up and say no in the face of everybody else being go. And I asked Bob once during my training, I said, well, Bob, what would happen on launch day if the whole launch team was go? And hopefully we instilled into Charlie Blackwell Thompson, the launch director for Artemis. She's going to do a terrific job. So that's the launch director job in a nutshell. The family aspect, I can't tell you enough how much fun it was to work out. Again, the people in this room that worked out there, you know this, but maybe for the folks that didn't, it was just fun going to work and fun coming home. Bob tells a story about, I think it was McCartney, wasn't it? General McCartney. You ought to be able to whistle going to work and whistle coming home from work, and that's the way it was. And with a couple of exceptions, everybody got along really good, and it was just a really fun place to work. We celebrated launches together. We had beans and cornbread that was alluded to before that Norm Carlson started back for STS-1 and carried through all the way through the end of the program. Just, a lot of different traditions grew up, both in the test direction world and the system engineering world. Traditions are very important. They keep the generations together over time. We had different, George Page was the launch director, and then his son, Steve Page, was a GLS operator back at the integration console, and his son, Matt Page, is still out there. He's a GLS operator today.
Yeah.
So 3 generations of the Pages worked in the space program. So very important to have traditions. We had several. We would have bagels for rollout. I think Harrington, you probably provide bagels for several of your vehicle rollouts. The beans were started by Norm. It grew from one cooker up in his office to 12 of these 5-gallon cookers that as Harrington said, made the whole building smell. And it fell upon the NASA test director office to make the beans. And at one point I was the chief of that office, and so the different people in the office would cut up the ham, cut up the celery and the onions and the lemon pepper and all this, and oh God. And so we'd start cooking these things at like 6 hours. As soon as
how this book has been very popular. What's your reaction a couple years after you and Jonathan here writing it? We're not going to ask you if you're going to be heading out to Hollywood to help script writers, but I'm curious: is the reception better than you thought it would be, or you just? Explain about that whole experience, Mike.
Yeah, I'll tell you. For me to write a book is the farthest thing from. I'm an engineer. Come on, I don't even read books, let alone write books. But somebody had to tell Columbia's final story, and I had different parts and different roles in that whole scenario. So it kind of was logical that I would do that. And I started writing the book 5 years after I retired, or after the accident, and just couldn't do it. And then met Jonathan at Norm Carlson's memorial service, as a matter of fact, and one thing led to another, and he and I authored the book together. And the reception's been really good. We wish it had reached more people, and that's why we're excited about the fact that it's been picked up to be turned into a movie. And so the script is being written.
That's not a rumor. So.
No, it's not a rumor. It hasn't happened yet either, but it's been picked up and bringing Columbia home. You're welcome. They're for sale in the back.
We'll get an autograph for you.
Cheap. Extra copies. But no, it's been a good reception by everyone, and it tells the final story of Columbia that needed to be told.
Well, it's awesome, as we all know. Give him a hand for that. I know a lot of you have read that in there. We're getting at the end of this program here. Marty and I are going to do a couple things real quick. Mike, around the room, you noticed something that we have as little eye candy around the room here. Why don't you explain and show the next picture there, Marty. with you and
Yeah,
you and
there's
Nicole, who is here. Explain what we're looking at here and why the American Space Museum is so blessed to have them.
Well, the Discoveries is in the back corner, and what it is, it's a nameplate made on Herculite material that would go on the outside of the hatch of the orbiter, either in the OPF or out at the launch pad. And they just stick on to the hatch cover with Velcro. And so these different nameplates, one for each orbiter, and they were signed by the final flight crew for each of those orbiter missions. There you see Nikki when I had it on the runway after greeting her after her final flight, after Discovery's final flight. And we've got Atlantis and Endeavor and Discovery, and they were presented to me in the control room by the team as a going away present for me, and they're now at the museum where they belong.
Yes, and we're honored to have them. Mike said they needed a good place. You even made a comment. They're one of the coolest swag things you've ever gotten. And
Oh, absolutely.
the crew has signed it, and the closeout crew has signed it. And in fact, Nick Enix, our collection manager, is holding Discovery back there. He found a prominent place for him in our Apollo or our shuttle gallery. So I hope that you all enjoy that. Quite a day we've had here, gentlemen, and capping it off with, we said, gentlemen launched 80% of the shuttles and 75% of, and since eternity, every human being that's left the earth here. What more can you guys add to this day for us?
I'll just say one thing that I think should be obvious to everyone, but all three of us have received too many awards that were given to us personally, and they really were given in behalf of the performance of the launch team. And we need to set straight the definition of a launch team. Everyone who worked on the hardware, the software prior to launch, it could be weeks before, months before, gluing tile to the orbiter, inspecting tile, or checking out a system. And when they have finished the task, be it a technician or an engineer or a planner or scheduler, and signs the work document or stamps it or whatever, or puts some numbers in a computer nowadays more often, they just gave a go for launch. Just as important as the ones we did at T-minus whatever minutes in the launch count, with the cameras rolling and the world listening. Just as important. And the important thing is those workers knew what they were doing was important.
That's exactly right.
Mr. Harrington, final thoughts?
Well, it was, as you and I talked when we did that little podcast the other day, it was always a pleasure for me to walk into the countdown and work with launch teams that we had. Because I always felt, and still do to this day, that they were the finest launch team that the country ever had. And it's like the three of us, it was never, in our case, I did this or anything like that. It was always, we did this because we were just a small part of the launch team. And I thank them every day for the job they did.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Harrington. Mike, you're at the Astronauts Memorial Foundation. I'll give you the final say here. We've enjoyed having you guys as partners of this and hope it leads to other things, but we definitely will do it again, I think. But Mike, go ahead.
Well, at the end of the shuttle program, when after the Columbia accident, we had three major recommendations from the Accident Investigation Board as a result of that accident. And it became obvious that the shuttle wasn't going to fly anymore, but the recommendations were to finish the International Space Station. Because we had all these agreements with the 16-member nation member nations of the enterprise to get that done, and we owed that to them. And so finish the International Space Station. While you're doing that, design a next transportation system for American astronauts. And then when you're done with the ISS, retire the shuttle. So we had those marching directions from 2004 roughly on to the end of the program. And so we all saw the end coming. It wasn't a bitter end at all. It was a triumphant end. We finished the ISS as we were asked to do. We retired the shuttle, didn't have any other accidents. And I can tell you the final shuttle flight was as safe, if not safer, than any other flight we ever had in the shuttle program, because we owed it to that final crew to do it right. And I'm just damn proud of the whole team. As Bob said, it's not just the team in that control room. It's everybody that works out there doing the best they can to make sure the astronauts come home safe. And I was just proud to be part of it. So thank you.
Well, thank you. I'm proud to know all these gentlemen like you are. If you didn't notice, Mr. Sieck has got his STS-1 badge on there. We love that on there. I'm going to show a couple other, so you guys gentlemen stay right there. We're going to end our show for our people on Facebook and YouTube. Wanted to show the shuttle sinking into the sunset, so to speak there. But want to, yeah, and then go ahead, Marty. Wait, we'll go right there. Yeah, that's what we want to do. There's the shuttle sinking into the sunset after a great day. We appreciate everybody being here. Mr. Tim Gagnon has come up with an emblem for Shuttlefest. Tim, what do y'all think? Well, and I will point out to you that the shuttle triangle is actually an A for the alpha, with the red, white, and blue making the A. And then the outside circle comes down to make omega sign. So he's got the beginning and the end of the program there. And that's why he's the KSC artist. So thank you, Tim. You've been a great partner this weekend. We really appreciate you. And we thank you all. Hugh Harris, come up here. Marty, we're going to put everybody on here. Open it up, Marty, on the, we hope to see y'all April 15th. We want to go out with like this. Marty, you get on the camera there and make it bigger. And we'll get all of our panel. And Mr. Harris here, can't thank you enough. Let me get that off there. Hyatt Place. I think y'all be recommending this place. They were outstanding in supporting us here. Yeah, go out there. There, we get the wide angle there. Hugh, you did a fabulous job. Of course, you know me being a journalist. You're one of my idols. I always wonder what it'd be like to have to put up with a George Page or somebody like that saying, "No, you're not going to report that yet." And all that kind of stuff in there.
These guys were easier than George.
Oh, yeah. Combined, they're probably easier than George. But I just wanted to give you a lot of credit, okay, that when I asked you to do this, you just, like I said, just took it like an assignment, like you've been told there. So do you have any final comments about, and then we're all going to go out with our saying that we do go out on our podcast. But have the last word here for us here, Hugh.
Well, it's always great to see all of you. And it's been, made my life far better than it would have been doing anything else in the world.
Thank you. And so, on behalf of the American Space Museum and the Astronaut Memorial Foundation, I am Mark Marquette. Our museum has been a pleasure to put on this event for all of you out there and you people here. And we will see you next year to do what? Bridge the space between us. Thank you all.